When I first started Christ Church, Portland, 7 years ago, we had a few friends and a few families, and we wanted to do something different in the world. And 7 years later, we are gathered here at screens all across the city, some of us in far off places, closing the church. There's a real sense of lament and grief, and also a real sense of completion. 7 is a kind of a magical number in that regard. Feels like we fully did something. We fully lived out our time as a community. And that community doesn't change. We'll still be community, but in terms of the institution that is Christ Church, Portland, registered 501c3 religious organization in the state of Oregon, that's ending today. I remember telling my friend Andy Goebel, Reverend Andy Goebel, when we were first starting out. He was a couple years ahead of us and starting his church up in St. John's. And there was a real sense that this kind of day was going to be doomsday failure. That's the training we got. We got this training that basically insisted that any kind of closure was a failure. And to be sure, we've seen failures and tragedies in churches closing. And I don't see that happening here today. I don't see that happening at all. I think we've ended really well. I think we've been very faithful. We've shown up and we've been present in the discernment and in the grief work. And so here we are, last Sunday in June 2020, in the midst of, by all accounts, 2 pandemics, coronavirus and racism. We're closing. One thing I remember saying to Andy way back then was that, maybe we should look at it differently. Maybe if we just kind of put out a few albums and we were that band that mattered to people. I can think of a few bands that really mattered to me. They only put out a few albums, 5, 6 years. And I still carry those songs and those melodies in my heart today. So that's my hope and prayer for Christ Church Portland, that we would be that community that carries each other into the four corners of the city and into the four corners of our lives and into God knows what 2020 continually will bring us in the four corners. So I want to read a poem and I want to reflect on a passage from Jesus. Just offer a few thoughts. First, the poem. It's in a collection called Love Poems from God, 12 Sacred Voices from the East and West, translated by Daniel Ledensky. It gathers a number of spiritual teachers and poets. And this poem is a special one. It's from Rabia of Basra, who was born in 717 and left us in 801. She was a very influential Islamic mystic with a very, 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 very mind-breaking story, soul-crushing story, and she persevered. Look her up. Rabia. This poem is called In My Soul. In my soul there is a temple, a shrine, a mosque, a church where I kneel. Prayer should bring us to an altar where no walls or names exist. Is there not a region of love where the sovereignty is illumined nothing, where ecstasy gets poured into itself and becomes lost, where the wing is fully alive but has no mind or body? In my soul, there is a temple, a shrine, a mosque, a church that dissolve in God. We named Christ Church because we wanted to be about 2 very simple, yet profoundly, nearly impossible concepts. Christ, Kyrios, the anointed one in the ancient Greek, the anointed one, the unifying one of all beings, of all things, of everyone, everywhere, everything. And church, ecclesia, actually just meant gathering people. It's kind of a political term actually in first century Rome, but we don't want to drag politics into church, do we? Christ Church, very simple concept that we could be a community for all people, of all people, bound together in this body of Christ, this anointed one who came into real space and time and as a Jewish Palestinian boy amidst empire and saved the world. Kind of upside down kind of saving. Because he failed, right? He died. He didn't win. But it's a more profound sense of winning. If you want to win, you got to lose. So Christ Church, two very simple concepts. And for me, that's what we're about. Community, trying to follow the divine light that sparks in each and every one of us. There's this passage in Matthew 10 where the disciples, the first friends of Jesus, were very, very scared. Empire was pursuing them, the boot of Roman soldiers literally at their heels, at their backs, on some of their necks. And these tattered friends, this ragtag group of disciples of Jesus were very afraid. And in Matthew 10, Jesus keeps saying, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Do not fear them. Have no fear. And this passage, it's verse 40, 41, and 42. Jesus says to them, you think that I'm somebody special, but it's actually all of you, all of us that are someone special. And the special that we are is not because of what we've done in the world, but because of who we are trying to be in the world and what we are trying to do in terms of embracing the world and loving the world and serving the world. It's not some kind of power over people, but it's a power within, and it's a holy power. It's a holy, living, breathing thing. So don't try to worship me, try to just do likewise. He says, those who receive you are also receiving me, and those who receive me are receiving the one who sent me. Those who receive a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Those who receive a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. I assure you that everybody who gives even a cup of cold water to these little ones, because they are my disciples, will certainly be rewarded. Maybe you've heard the verse in a different way. Those who give a cold cup of water in my name, right? That's what Jesus was about. That's what the Anointed One was about. Not about splitting people up into tribes and parties and divisions, but into some sort of unified whole. That's what I love about Father Richard Rohr's teaching, that the Christ, the Anointed One, is not so much concerned about dogmas and doctrines and teachings that we memorize, but the Christ is actually found in everyone, everywhere, and in everything. Imagine that everyone you encounter this week has the Christ light in them. Everywhere you go, God is with you. The divine is with you everywhere you go. And everything you see and touch and experience all belongs in this God journey. I know for some of us that's been a hard pill to swallow because we were told to be very afraid, right? We were told to be very terrified. And the scriptures have been used as texts of terror for so many of us. They've been used to abuse, to hurt, to oppress, to not allow us to be our full selves. And we have said no to all of that and yes to God's radical sense and reality of inclusion. You know, we're both sinners and saints alike. We're none of us are perfect, but all of us have that Christ light in us, and we get to go and do likewise and serve. giving a cold cup of water in Jesus' name. And maybe not even we needing to say Jesus' name. God knows what we're up to. The philosopher Kierkegaard maybe said it best, that faith sees best in the dark. And it's a dark time right now, right? So many lives lost, so many livelihoods gone. And we get to maybe reimagine what it looks like to be in 2020. I saw a really funny, bad tweet today that said, hindsight is 2020, and that it was some kind of demented time traveler coming back, giving that saying to us, and now here we are wondering what kind of hindsight in 2020 we have. But maybe this is an invitation for us to explore in this dark moment what our faith really compels us to do and to be, right? That poem that Rabia gave us, it speaks to this bigger sense of what church is, right? Of course, it's beyond the four walls. I think it's also beyond any kind of lineage that we, and tradition and canons we have, right? That we church with everyone and everywhere and in everything we do. Of course, Sunday morning here, we do church. We do church on Monday night, Friday night, Saturday morning. We do church in the streets. We do church in the quiet of our homes. We do church in the mountains. We do church everywhere. Now, and don't get me wrong, I am very much concerned with the fear and distrust of institutions. A lot of institutions need to die. They need to burn down, right? But we need institutions. We actually need brick and mortar. We need walls. We need bylaws and governance documents. We need incorporations. We need people gathered together institutionally to do things together, because that's also a way in which we see great change. Policies written that help people. Business practices that change communities. If anything we may have learned in these two pandemics, our public health crisis and our race pandemic that we experience here in 2020, is this: that people matter, Black lives matter, institutions matter, and we get to figure out how to dive deeply into all of these things and be part of the change that's unfolding, the great unveiling of new life that is coming right here, right now, even though it seems very dark, right? So somehow church is this thing in our hearts that binds us one to one and to the divine. And somehow church is also these institutions. And I feel no bitterness or jadedness about the church. I get frustrated with church folk often. No one here. But, the church folk that we see on the news. But it matters. So as we pursue justice, as we pursue health, as we pursue whatever it looks like to be alive in 2020, in July and August and September and October and November and December and into 2021, we carry with us everything that truly matters. These last few months, I've been kind of taking inventory of what I need to let go of again. What do I need to take out of my proverbial suitcase, and how to lighten the load so that I can be ready for the journey ahead. And so how do we carry all that we can't leave behind in this next moment or season ahead, while also realizing that we're going to discover new things and new people and new ways to be, and it's all going to be really, really special and good. Two final thoughts. One, I've heard from folks near and far, folks that were with us at the beginning, folks that ducked in for a season and ducked out, folks that are here with us right this very moment, that said that they first truly heard and felt and experienced God's love, and that God was love, not fear, not hate, not an angry white man in the clouds with a lightning bolt ready to strike, but that God was love. And in a way that breaks my heart, because I had hoped that people would have heard that way before Christ Church ever showed up on the scene. But in another way, it makes me feel really grateful that we got to do that together, that we got to tell people that together. So thank you. Thanks for helping tell that important truth, that gospel word, that good news that God is love. And then the other thing is that I think that church is actually better thought of as a verb, that we are churching in the world. And that it's in communities of practice, breaking bread and sharing wine, rolling up our sleeves, mending fences, mending hearts, maybe burning a few things down together. And in these communities of practice, there we find the true body of the Anointed One, who said, "Don't worship me, go and do likewise." So I know we don't have church next week, and we're not going to have church together the week after that. And some of us are saying, praise be to God, I can't stand Zoom church. and some of us are very heartbroken. But know this, that we are just going to church differently. And we'll see each other. And we'll be connected. And we'll be part of this, as we have always been, this great cloud of witnesses. This great subversive cloud of witnesses that is found in everyone and everywhere and in everything. Praise be to God.